Good morning, everyone, and it's good to see you all here today. Well, this will be the last talk that um, I offer before the August break. Next week we will have a session on Saturday because it's the last Saturday in July, but um, it'll be kind of an open forum, and you'll get more details about that in an email. But today I would like to talk about um, elephants. We've been studying the Dhammapada, exploring the Dhammapada, this early Buddhist teaching, and one of the chapters is entitled The Elephant. A friend of ours who spent a good chunk of his life within the Missouri correctional system, upon getting out of that facility years ago, decades ago, when we first met him, had come to one of our meditation sessions, and I talked to him about, well, how he got interested in Buddhism and meditation, and he had attended a group at the prison, um, and had taken it very seriously and wanted to continue his practice after getting out. In so many words, I asked him, well, what was his takeaway? What meant, what resonated with him? And one phrase he used was, be the elephant, be the elephant. Well, I didn't know that much about elephants, and I didn't know a lot about the references to elephants in Buddhist literature. There are a number of references to elephants. Elephants are, of course, common, or at least were at the Buddhist time, in South Asia and South Africa, Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. And and they were an admired symbol, a symbol of wisdom, a symbol of strength, a symbol of intelligence. The habits of elephants are interesting. They tend to roam in matriarchal herds, with the oldest female being the matriarch, and then her daughters and her daughters' children and other female relatives and children in a herd. Sometimes the herds can be quite large. The males, once they reach maturity, go off on their own. And they may form small little groupings, but oftentimes they just wander by themselves in the forest until such time as they experience uh, sort of the elephant equivalent of rut, and and then they come back and find a female to mate with. So the Buddha was actually sometimes referred to as the great elephant because of the admirable traits that were attributed to elephants. So I'll read the first few verses of this chapter entitled The Elephant. As an elephant in battle, endures an arrow shot from a bow, so I will endure verbal abuse. Many people indeed lack virtue. The tamed elephant is the one they take into a crowd. The tamed elephant is the one the king mounts. Best among humans is the tamed person who endures verbal abuse. Excellent are tamed mules, thoroughbreds, horses of the Indus Valley, tusked elephants, and great elephants. But even more excellent are people who have tamed themselves. So, elephants, of course, are known for um, these traits I mentioned, but also known for just as forbearance. I mean, they have this advantage of being the biggest one out there and the strongest. So their size and their strength means that they don't really have wild predators, at least if they're healthy. Sometimes a sick elephant may be taken down, but in general, elephants lack predators except for misguided, greedy humans who might kill them for their tusks. So elephants have this forbearance that is in part based on their size and their strength, but there are different kinds of strength. There's a story that you may be familiar with, a Zen story, and it dates back to the time of the samurai warriors when um, competing groups of samurai were taking various territory within Japan. And there was a samurai group that came into a small village and they told everybody, leave now or you will be killed. Mm. This may sound like a familiar theme nowadays, but it was also something done back at that time. And of course, the villagers were terrified and left and went into the countryside, leaving their belongings behind. And then the one samurai, the samurai chief, entered the temple. And to his surprise, he saw the priest in the temple still sitting there in meditation. And he thought, well, maybe the priest didn't hear. So he told him, leave now or you will be killed. And the priest just sat there in meditation. So the samurai said, do you realize that you are looking at someone who could cut off your head without blinking an eye? And the priest looked up at him and said, do you realize that you are looking at someone who could have his head cut off without blinking an eye? And the warrior was taken aback by this fearlessness of death that he hadn't seen before, was humbled, dropped his sword, and bowed to the priest. So there are different kinds of strength. There is physical strength, and there's moral strength, and a kind of strength of faith. and purpose. It's another story that regards elephants in Buddhist literature, and that speaks to the patience of elephants. They and this story is taken from the Jataka tales, tales of previous lives of the Buddha. And in a previous life of the Buddha, he was an elephant. And he was accustomed to, in the heat of the day, standing under a tree for shade. And there were monkeys in the tree, and the monkeys thought it would be great fun to tease the elephant. So they, taking advantage of their skill and climbing, and climbed up into the tree and then dropped down on the elephant's back and jumped up and down. And one of them went back and pulled the elephant's tail, and others pulled on the ears of the elephant. And one of them grabbed his trunk, and then they would hang and swing on his tusks. And they did this day after day. And at one point, the tree spirit who was observing all of this said to the elephant, "Why do you put up with this? You don't have to put up with this." And the elephant said, "At some time, if they continue to behave this way, they will encounter an elephant not so patient and more aggressive than I. And then they will have their reward." So at some point, the elephant went off and found another tree. And sure enough, a more aggressive bull elephant came and got under the tree with the monkeys, and they started the same behavior. They jumped up and down on the monkey's back and pulled its tail, etc. And this elephant shook them off onto the ground and stomped on them. And at a later time, the first elephant came back and went to the tree, and the tree spirit said, "Well, why didn't you do that?" And this elephant that was the previous incarnation of the Buddha said, "Well, at this time I am free of the monkeys, and I am also free of any remorse for harming the monkeys." Some of you may have comments about that story, but that's the story. There's a final story I'd like to relate about an elephant. And this is a story from the Pali Canon, and it involves Devadatta. Devadatta was a brother-in-law of the Buddha who came to follow the Buddha, but had just a lot of discontent, and he was a divisive figure, and he tried to essentially usurp the power of the Buddha in the Sangha and divide the Sangha. And at various times, he also went so far as to try to harm or kill the Buddha. And one of his efforts involved an elephant. There was an elephant named Nalagiri, who was known to be a very aggressive bull elephant. And he Devadatta waited until this bull elephant went into must, which is what they call rut in an elephant. And this bull elephant in must was extremely aggressive. And to make things worse, Devadatta fed it some alcohol and made it drunk. And then it set it. It told it to charge the Buddha. And sure enough, Nalagiri started charging the Buddha as he was standing there. And the Buddha just stayed in place and looked calmly at the elephant. And the elephant, surprised by the Buddha's behavior, kneeled down and put his head to the ground, bowing to the Buddha. This was sort of a Buddha miracle story, supposedly. It's interesting, though, that I don't know what the circumstances exactly of this encounter with the elephant and the Buddha were, but in guidebooks, where they give helpful hints to travelers who are going to sub-Saharan Africa, they talk about what to do if you're charged by an elephant. And they're usually something along these lines. The first thing is to distinguish whether it's a mock charge or a real charge. And elephants make these mock charges in order to just, sort of challenge another elephant without really intending to harm them. And a mock charge is when the elephant's ears are out and the trunk is straight down, extended toward the ground, and the head is up. And with a mock charge, you're supposed to just stand there calmly like the Buddha did. And don't say anything, but try not to act afraid. That would definitely be a challenge for a tourist, I think. And then with a real charge, though, the trunk is curled into a ball, and the ears are back against the elephant's head, and the head is down in a butting position. And that's a real charge. And what you're supposed to do there is run in a zigzag pattern to try to get away and find some sort of large obstacle you can hide behind, like a vehicle or a large tree. Don't pick a small tree because elephants can tear up small trees easily. It's hard to imagine having the presence of mind to deal with that as an occasional tourist in Africa, but that's the usual advice. So I'll finish with the remainder of these readings towards the end of the chapter, some selections. If you find an intelligent companion, a fellow traveler, a sage of good conduct, you should travel together, delighted and mindful, overcoming all dangers. But if you do not find an intelligent companion, a fellow traveler of good conduct and wise, travel alone, like a king renouncing a conquered kingdom, like the elephant matanga in the forest. The elephant matanga was, again, sort of a symbol of the Buddha who went off into the forest as a solitary figure to live in the quiet of the forest. As many male elephants actually do. And the chapter concludes with this relatively long verse. Happiness is having friends when need arises. Happiness is contentment with whatever there is. Happiness is merit at the end of one's life. Happiness is the abandoning of all suffering. In the world, respect for one's mother is happiness, as is respect for one's father. In the world, respect for renunciants is happiness, as is respect for Brahmins. Happiness is virtue lasting through old age. Happiness is steadfast faith. Happiness is the attainment of wisdom. Not doing evil is happiness. So be the elephant. I think I have a greater understanding of what our friend was saying when he got out of prison. Yeah, the other morning I was riding along Midland, short stretch along Midland, and they've been repaving Midland, and they've got the northwest lanes pretty much paved now, and so there are two lanes going northwest on Midland. And I could see in my rearview mirror, my bicycle's rearview mirror, I could see a car approaching, and it was in the right-hand lane. And I was kind of hugging the shoulder. And many of the cars that pass in that situation will move over to the left-hand lane. There was no other car in sight, so it easily could have changed lanes. But this car didn't change lanes. It just sort of went along straight ahead in the right-hand lane. And the shoulder's a little rough at that point, so it was something I had to be aware of. And to add to it, as the car passed, the person in the passenger seat rolled down the window and yelled something at me. Now, I couldn't understand what he yelled, but in general, people don't roll down the window and yell something at you if it's something nice. So I made the assumption that it was not nice. Be the elephant. Be the elephant. So in this chapter, the association, the relationship between restraint and freedom is made, which may seem paradoxical, but it's a recurring theme throughout the Dhammapada, and a recurring theme throughout Buddha's teaching. Restraint and freedom, and also restraint and happiness. So what the friend I admired used as kind of a mantra in certain situations, I have also adopted. Be the elephant. So we'll go into, I'll stop there, and we'll go into breakout rooms. And I don't know, what do you think about all this? What stands out to you? What makes sense? What might not make sense or seem impractical? What's the takeaway here? Thank you very much for listening. And I'll rejoin you in a few moments. Thank you.